Senator Ben Cardin. Senator, it's always great to see you as well. What is your take on the escalating tensions with Iran, and what evidence have you seen that Iran is behind this attack?
Well, Katie, it's good to be with you. We will be getting classified briefings sometime this week, so we'll have more information as to the Houthis and the Iranians who was responsible for this attack. But one thing is clear, that the temperature between Iran and the United States has gotten much hotter with the president's tweets. This is no way to conduct foreign policy, particularly at this particular time with Iran. And the United States has isolated itself. We do need to work with our international partners who share our views. And unfortunately, the United States has been more isolated than we need to be in regards to dealing with Iran, who does dangerous things.
What do you make of the president's locked and loaded comments? Are we gearing up to go to war?
Well, I must tell you, it was certainly not helpful. It just raises the temperature. There could be a miscalculation. There could be a miscalculation on behalf of the Iranians or the Americans. So to me, it's not the way you conduct diplomacy.
Have you heard anything directly from the White House on what the next steps might be?
Well, we do know there will be some briefings this week. We'll have an opportunity to see some of the documentation in a classified forum. But we also do know that the president rarely consults with Congress or tells us an overall strategy, because we don't know whether he has one or not.
The president and Secretary Pompeo both say they believe Iran is behind this. Was there any briefing at all with your committee before either of them went out and said that?
No, there's been no briefing or documentation to our committees. I expect, though, tomorrow I will be able to see in a classified setting documentation. We do know that there is disagreement as to the American involvement with the Saudis in regards to what's happening in Yemen here on Capitol Hill. And there's been a failure of this administration to work with Congress to develop a coordinated strategy in regards to Yemen and in regards to the Saudis.
We have new reporting from Courtney Kube, Ken Dilanian, and Carol Lee at NBC News here that U.S. intelligence shows that the attack was launched from Iran. If that is the case, and that proves, if the president comes out and says that, or if the intelligence you see confirms that, what is the appropriate response?
Well, quite frankly, we got to be very careful about using our military. What we need to do is use the international community to isolate Iran. Iran's the bad actor. They need to be isolated, not America. When we pulled out the Iran nuclear agreement, we hurt our opportunity to be an international leader with our allied partners. So what the president needs to do is to get unified support, as much unity as possible, to isolate Iran. There's a lot of things that we can do to make it extremely difficult for Iran to pursue this type of action.
Given how this country got into the war with Iraq, how does the American people, how does the American public trust this government when it says we need to have a military strike or get into an armed conflict in the Middle East?
Let's make it clear, the president does not have the authorization to use military force against Iran. Congress has never given this president or any president that authorization. The president needs to come to Congress and seek our authorization. At that time, I must tell you, we're going to want to know exactly what the strategy is. We want to use diplomacy, not military, to resolve this issue.
What about the 2001 AUMF? What if he uses that?
Well, the AUMF was used in regards to those who planned the attack against our country. It would be a stretch to try to use that now against Iran attacking the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and saying that Congress authorized that in 2001 after the attack on our country.
Should we be in lockstep with Saudi Arabia?
No, we shouldn't be. Saudis have done things that are inconsistent with American values. We saw that with the Khashoggi murder in Turkey. No, we are not necessarily in lockstep. We have a strategic partnership with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Clearly, the supply of oil is important to our national security interests, so we have a lot of common interests, but we need to develop a strategy that represents America's national security.
I know you were not initially in favor of the Iran nuclear deal, but you were also not in favor of leaving the Iran nuclear deal. Do you think the fact that we are no longer in that deal may have contributed to the escalating of tensions, and potentially, if the reporting bears out and the intelligence bears out, this attack being launched from Iran onto Saudi Arabia? Did they feel emboldened?
Well, there's no question in my mind that with America pulling out of the Iran nuclear agreement while Iran was in compliance with it, that it did elevate the tension between the United States and Iran. There's no question in my mind. To me, it was the wrong decision to make. It was against our national security interests for us to pull out of the agreement. We should have pursued actions against Iran for its non-nuclear violations of international agreements. And we would have had the support of our allied partners in doing that, isolating Iran. That would have been the much better course to pursue. Instead, by the president withdrawing, he did elevate the tension between our country and Iran.
Do you support
and isolated America.
Do you support the president talking with Iran without preconditions?
I have no idea what the president's going to do. I would like the president to be prepared for a meeting. We've seen in the summit meetings he's had with Kim Jong-un, there does not look like there was as much preparation as there should have been. We also see that with the summit meetings with Putin and Russia. So, yes, I want to see diplomacy work, but I want to make sure the president's prepared and we have the support of our international partners when we meet and talk with Iran.
Senator Ben Cardin. Senator, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.